All right, this week we've been telling you about the 5 groups that are aligning to try and destroy President Trump. Now, they want to undermine the will of you, the American people. Now, these are the threats that we're facing. One, the deep state. And, of course, they're going after President Trump, selectively leaking information. Just look at the disgruntled, fired former FBI Director James Comey. He's using the press to carry out his own personal vendetta against President Trump. Number 2, the Destroy Trump media. These rigid, left-wing, Hillary-supporting ideologues pushing their tinfoil hat conspiracy theories night after night, breathlessly hyping everything up, one fake news scandal after fake news scandal. Number 3, the Democrats, really sore losers, obstructionists. They refuse to accept the results that you gave us this election season. Then you got weak Republicans, establishment Republicans, feckless, no backbone, no spine. They never supported Trump or his agenda. They're a threat to the president. And number 5, never Trumpers, holier than thou, elitist outlets, National Review, Weekly Standard. They want vindication. They want relevance. And in the last 2 weeks, a new pattern of attack is emerging. This is what I want you to pay close attention to. The New York Times, Washington Post, constantly using anonymous sources, sources outside of the White House, dropping one huge bombshell report just before the national newscast every night at 6:30 p.m., and then, of course, cable coverage right after. Then there's been breathless coverage from the Destroy Trump media, their Democratic allies, now calling day after day for President Trump's impeachment. So just listen to this from earlier this week. You cannot make this stuff up.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America for obstruction of justice.
Are we getting closer and closer to the possibility of yet another impeachment process?
After watching the Clinton impeachment, I thought I'd never see another one. But I think we're in impeachment territory now for the first time.
We are well on our way to impeachment because I think there's a clear set of facts that show obstruction of justice.
This is heading toward the end, right? It has to be, right? It feels that way.
All right, here's what they're not telling you. The Destroy Trump media and the Democrats, they're not going to tell you many of the stories that you have heard in the last 2 weeks that they're using to destroy President Trump and hyperventilate every night have now been proven totally false. Now, let's start with the Trump-hating Washington Post. Last week, the Post reported that the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, he threatened to quit because of Comey's firing. Big alarms that night. Guess what? Rosenstein quickly shot it down. Somebody in the press actually asked him, and he sat on camera for an interview and said, no, he's not quitting, never threatened to quit. On the same day, the Washington Post, they alleged that before James Comey was fired, he requested more resources for the Russia investigation. That's why he got fired. Well, big surprise, the Washington Post wrong again, because the acting FBI director, Andrew McCabe, testified the next day that he never heard such a request. And earlier this week, yeah, the Post is back. They thought they nailed President Trump. They ran a story claiming the president leaked classified information to the Russians during last week's Oval Office visit. But people that were actually in the room, now they cited people outside of the White House, they said the people in the room, it never happened. Also, the New York Times, they're trying to keep up, and they've been smearing Trump from day one. Earlier this week, the paper of record cited a memo from James Comey, which claims that President Trump asked the now former FBI director to end the investigation into retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, that he sent himself a memo. Now, the president, the White House, have strongly denied that this ever happened. And then, of course, there's the fact that the reporter who wrote the story never even saw the so-called memo. This is fascinating. Watch this.
Why is it the Times has the story but not the memo?
Well, I've been working on a story for the past few days about the fact that Comey had written these. We thought that that was pretty significant in and of himself. And then in the process of pushing on those doors this morning, I learned more about one of these memos. And someone that had seen them recounted details to me.
Now, as we pointed out, and we have reported on this program, now, in January, if in fact they had a memo and he said that President Trump was trying to encourage him to obstruct justice, well, guess what? That would have been 2 felonies that James Comey would have committed, because James Comey has a legal obligation to report that immediately to the Justice Department, which, by the way, he didn't do. And then he testified in May, and he said, guess what? Nobody ever tried to get me to obstruct justice. Whoops. And tonight, the New York Times is at it again. You can't make it up. And they're claiming that President Trump called James Comey, quote, a nut job. But go back to the memo. The Times alluding, the president trying to get the FBI to back away from Flynn. By law, he would have had to report this immediately to the Justice Department. He was so alarmed. Why didn't he say it immediately? Why didn't he report it immediately? Now, by not doing so, Comey may have broken the two laws we're discussing. They're up there on the side of your screen. Take a look at them. Then there's the fact that when Comey appeared before Congress on May 3rd, well, remember he was asked about the potential for interference with an FBI investigation. Wow, did that ever happen? Wouldn't it be big if it happened? This is what he said.
So if the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that without an appropriate purpose. I mean, oftentimes they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
Not happened. President Trump did ask James Comey to stop looking into Michael Flynn. Wouldn't that have been the perfect time to bring it up? And he said it never happened. Remember, that meeting was in January. This is in May when he testified. And last week, during a congressional hearing, the acting FBI director, Andrew McCabe, he said there has been no efforts to impede the Russia investigation in spite of everything your friends in the news media that lie to you every night are telling you.
I think the American people want to know, has the dismissal of Mr. Comey in any way impeded, interrupted, stopped, or negatively impacted any of the work, any investigation, or any ongoing projects at the Federal Bureau of Investigations?
The work of the men and women of the FBI continues despite any changes in circumstance, any decisions. So there has been no effort to impede our investigation to date.
What you're seeing play out here is a well-orchestrated, well-organized attack. They want to take down a sitting U.S. president. Democrats, the propaganda media, they're throwing everything they have at President Trump and the deep state. And now instead of working on making the country a better place, enacting their agenda, the president is now forced to spend the majority of his time defending the lies, the smears, the conspiracy theories. Now, here's what everyone's missing. The left is successful because they've been able to slow down his agenda dramatically. That's a win for them because they're not thinking about you and what you voted for this election, the economy, creating jobs, fixing health care, foreign policy. No, they want to create chaos because they think that brings them back to power. That's what's at stake here.